Hi, welcome to our Ascension Ground Crew check-in for this week. Here we go. I thought I would kick us off with a question that came to me from someone that had not been who had seen the video that we did last week and was curious, what is Ascension? Angela, I don't get what that Ascension thing is that you're talking about. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great if this week we talked about what I guess our ascension or, definition of ascension is, what we think ascension is and what it means to us. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Jump in. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, well, I think ascension in general is just kind of the uplifting or expansion of human consciousness and then all the consequences that come out of that. Um, and I do think we are going through some type of ascension right now. I understand some people won't agree with that. And it's largely kind of an idea that's sort of in New Age community, I would say the most, or people that are into aliens or psychic stuff or conspiracies or, that kind of stuff. There's also a line in the Bible, though, that talks about at some point God says, I will create a new heavens and a new earth. So it's also biblical, actually. But in terms of, in general, I think a lot of people they've started becoming more intuitive, more type of psychic abilities, more of a spiritual awakening, more interest in these things, more interest in even like the conspiracy topics or alien stuff with, like you mentioned, the UAP Congress hearings that have been going on before, Angela. I think that's all part of awakening. Right now in America, I think there's an awakening of coming back to just morality. It just going off of the whole Charlie Kirk assassination and these kinds of things. Like, I think there's an awakening of, you know, everyone's opinion isn't all the same. It's not all like just everyone can have their own perspective. I think there's an awakening to like, no, some things are good and some things are evil or wrong. And we need to get back to having a spine as a society and basically saying, no, we're not going to like put up with this kind of stuff. I do feel that a lot of people, who are more conservative or more Christian are starting to feel that way now. And I've seen a bunch of videos of people saying those types of things like, we're not just going to let there be a complete safe space for some of the insanity that's going on. Like, we're going to call people out and there's going to be some type of backlash, whether it's just verbal or whether it's people getting fired from their jobs, which has happened. A lot of people who are celebrating his death have been fired from their jobs because they were posting it online. And yeah, I mean, I think getting back to morality is a good start. I mean, in a lot of the spiritual teachings, that's one of the first things. They'll tell you have to start by being moral. Like, don't steal, don't rob, don't do this kind of stuff, don't be violent, don't this, that, and the other. And with that as your foundation, you can start to expand your consciousness in a more spiritual way. But when you don't even have that foundation, the fruits of the spirit, the higher gifts are not going to come into you. It's just not going to happen. Um, so, yeah, I mean, you guys know I muscle test and I calibrate humanity. I'm calibrating humanity at like 221 right now, like a little over 220. A little while ago, it was like 210. So, and I do think 250 is a key marker. Um, when it gets to 250, and again, we're talking about David Hawkins' map of consciousness for anyone that doesn't know. Um, there's a spiritual ability, there's a spiritual gift where you can kind of see through the bullshit.
Mhm.
Like when someone's lying to you, you just see that they're lying. Because there's a level of integrity and truth that just comes into your spirit. And it's like you kind of become a lie detector spiritually. You just feel like, no, this is crap. So you just see it. And so I think humanity's like 4 months away, 5 months away from that. And that's going to be a big marking point in the timeline. in my opinion. Yeah, and I think there's a big Christian revival, which is something that's been happening to me just out of nowhere. Um, and there's just a lot of people turning to spirituality or towards religion, but I think some people are turning towards even more traditional religion as they just feel like we need morality again. We need some kind of traditional values again. This stuff of kind of letting the endless insanity of the kind of stuff that's been going on in society, it's not sustainable. I mean, people are realizing this. You can't endlessly allow this stuff to go on. It's not sustainable. Your society will collapse. So there has to be an undergirding, underlying set of values that support human life. Otherwise, you don't have a society. So
Thanks, Brian, for weighing in.
that's my, yeah,
Sounds
that's my
like what
thing.
it sounds like what you're saying is you liken it to the to awakening as more people awaken to and be able to judge and assess the truth or their truth or how they see things through whatever, like you said, the BS detector. That is, those are signs of ascension, from what I'm hearing from what you're saying. What about you, Myrna? Do you have like I know I queued you up on this question yesterday when we were speaking briefly, so you probably had some time to digest and think about it.
Yeah, no, I did, and I appreciate that. I had some time to think about it. We've named this get together the Ascension Ground Crew,
Mhm.
and part of the reason we created a Life Designed, the sort of platform that we share on the YouTube channel. It has its own alifedesign.org website, and then Patreon, A Life Design Beyond Limits. We have been seeing post-COVID that people have been asking themselves questions they didn't think they'd be asking. Like, why did institutions fail me? In terms of the response to COVID, how am I supposed to work from home and school my kids at home? Like, how is the whole world in lockdown? And with that initial questioning came some personal examination that maybe they hadn't been done. They had busy lives and jobs and kids and so on. So there's been a gradual, if you say awakening or ascension process, or kind of personal examining about this job, I've been happy with it and it's not working for me anymore. Or we didn't think we could ever homeschool, but now that we've come through COVID, we're going to homeschool our kids because we want to instill moral values that are not being instilled in the school they were in. So people have been grappling with these questions unexpectedly for 4 or 5 years now. And I think I have the sort of yoga philosophy understanding of the cycles of 25,000 years that this planet, moves towards the center of all the galaxies for 12,500 years and then moves away from it for 12,500 years. And in that philosophy, the closer we get to galactic center, the more energies we have, the more likely this planet and the people on it will achieve a kind of golden age and, progress in terms of the humans that are occupying the planet, their experience of life. And then as we move farther away, there's sort of a decline in that there has been this cycling. So I think we're in an upward ascension cycle from that philosophical viewpoint. But at Life Designed and the work that we're doing now here on Patreon, um, we're working with individuals who are in an ascension process, individuals who've decided, I need to walk more closely with God, or I need to reacquaint myself with Jesus, or I need to engage in meditation process. And certainly with what happened in the last week with Charlie Kirk, there was a lot of activity about, I'll be in church this weekend, and I haven't been in church in 10 years. So I think that was kind of an inflection point that sort of pushed more rapidly forward something that was already happening post-COVID. So I think there's people that are in an awakening, a spiritual awakening, an ascension just in their own lives, asking questions, seeking support. And then I think humanity overall is in a general awakening.
Mm.
So as we look at, you know, people holding vigils around the world, people, you know, commenting that they're going to re-engage in a faith process, whatever that looks like for them. And I guess I would just encourage people to, if your cathedral is a meadow, a park bench where you feed pigeons, a beautiful, you know, Catholic cathedral, if it's the local non-denominational church or synagogue or mosque or whatever, if you feel called to kind of re-engage spiritually, this is a very good time for that. So you'll find a lot of company, and that can make it easier when you find other people who will walk alongside you, also exploring, also re-engaging. So humans like to help each other, and this is a good time. If you're thinking of that, try a few things, go to a few places, meet some people, and see if you can, you know, engage in some kind of spiritual renewal for yourself. So I think that's ascension for me. It's individual and it's also a collective.
Yeah, I like how y'all notice that Myrna gets into coaching mode. She has really great ideas for you to follow. Go do this, go do that. And she's just awesome at that. So Coach Myrna has spoken, and I think that's
All
great
right.
advice. So here's what I was thinking when the question came to me, and I was asked this question by this person. I said, you know, to me, ascension, the grounding that I have is not yogic, it's Christian, it's specifically Catholic. And in the
Mhm.
Catholic tradition, we not only have the obvious ascension of Christ, you know, and that means that when the resurrection, right, and the idea that he was able to do miraculous things and including surpass death, and he was able to take his body and go, you know, with it and then reappear with it and go with it and reappear with it. So he was able to do this vibrational dance. I heard a really great analogy this morning watching a podcast, and it was the individual is saying that when you vibrate at a higher frequency, it's kind of like looking at a helicopter. When it's down on the ground and it's still, you can see and count all of the blades on the helicopter, you know. But when it's in the air, you can't count those. You can't even see the propellers, you know, they're spinning so fast, they're vibrating so fast. You can sense them, you can hear them, you can feel the vibration, you can feel a whoosh of it, but it's not like you can see it with your eyes. So Jesus was doing these things. And then later in the Catholic tradition, we're also taught this as well, that Mary, his mother, ascended too. That she was, you know, the angels came and swooped her, and on her passing, she ascended, the ascension of Mary. And which explains, they say, why she's able to make appearances to different people periodically throughout the ages in the last 2,000 years. And we have sacred sites where she has appeared. Now, mind you, she's not, and they are not the only ones that I have heard of that have been able to ascend this plane, this 3D, 4D type of existence, and been able to take themselves to a higher plane, their bodies to a higher plane, and then lower their vibration and come back into this plane and go and so forth. I've heard of miraculous, speaking of yogis, like Babaji, and these are people that have apparently surpassed death as well. So for me, ascension is that ability that we tap into when our DNA becomes fully intact, when the body comes online in such a way we're not all shut down like we have been. We're not doing the things like these signs you are talking about. We're not doing things like shutting down our heart and and judging people. It is a harmonious consciousness. When you've read the stories of people who are doing the spiritual journey and going on this path, and they talk about reaching a state of oneness, a state of nirvana, or a state of I think it's samadhi, I think is how it's called.
Samadhi, yes, samadhi.
Samadhi. And then nirvana in the Buddhist tradition. And then there's lots and lots of Christian saints and Christian mystics who have reached these ecstatic states where they are seeing visions, they're experiencing God, they experience God in everything. St. Francis walking around and communing with animals, and he's the this nature, almost like a nature deity in a way, but Christian, in the way he approached it. So there's all these paths that we can take, but we're all ascending to the kind of a top of the mountain, and we're trying to get to the state of oneness with our God connection. And to me, that's what ascension is. It sounds very ethereal and it sounds very abstract, and I love the fact that you're muscle testing, Brian, in order to test humanity. But that to me, it's really more of that individual path. If you, like Myrna was suggesting, work on your own ascension process, you then start to radiate that out and you start to affect other people, and they will either activate or not. They'll either be repelled if they're not ready or interested in that, or they'll be activated by that. So your responsibility is really not to, yes, you can pray for humanity, but you're not here to save humanity. You're not here to ascend humanity. You're here to ascend yourself to be able to do that. So to me, it's a very personal experience. And to me, it really does go back to the Christian roots that I have, which is when Jesus said, I took him seriously when I read this, that he said, you can do this and more. When someone was remarking about his remarkable abilities, you can do this and more. And I was like, yeah, we can be superhuman when everything is turned on in a physical way, in our physical form. So to me, ascension is about ascending this physical form and not considering and looking at things from a strictly 3D perspective where we're separated from each other. When we have things that would look like miracles and superpowers, when you have the ability to teleport, to levitate, to have telepathic communication. You cannot have telepathic communication with other beings unless the other beings and you are benevolent in benevolent harmony with each other. That is the state of being that humans haven't been used to. And so to me, that's what ascension is. It's attaining a state of being that is very different from what we are recognizing, especially when we watch the news. So hopefully that makes sense in a way for anyone that comes from a Christian tradition or a Catholic tradition like I do. They might start going, oh, so you're saying that Jesus said we could ascend? Yeah, that's probably very blasphemous to some Christians. But yeah, I take it seriously when Jesus said, do what I'm doing. I'm showing you the way. Be this way. Do these things. And I'm like, okay, well, let's be serious. Jesus is my guru, so I'm going to do what the guru says, you know? So that to me is what ascension means. And I really feel like we have come so far, like you were mentioning, Brian, with the levels of frequency as a group, as a human group. But I know personally I have. I just know that I've been working on this journey for a long time, long before COVID, long before 2012 when the Mayan calendar was supposed to stop and all these portals were supposed to open. I don't know about all that stuff, and I don't know about all of that astrology and the planets aligned and the energies and Mercury in retrograde, and that's just not my jam. I'm not into that, and so I don't understand how to read those signs. I just understand what it feels like to me and the energy. And it is about having those moral precepts and living it. When you live what you believe, when you walk your talk, and you're not just like we were taught when I was, in school, you can just go make confession and your sins will be forgiven. And then you can go make more sins and then go and make a confession and then your sins will be forgiven. That's not forward progress. That's a cycle of BS, is what it is. That's not ascension. That's just staying in a rut. So that system that was set up for us to be able to buy pardons, give the church money, build a church, and therefore we're going to go to heaven. Those kind of things are really silly. That's not forward progressing yourself. It's really living the things you know in your heart are the right things to live. That's what gets you to ascension ultimately. And you don't have to have a religious grounding. You don't have to have a spiritual practice per se. You can just be someone who wants to do be nice. Be nice to people. Be kind. Be kind is enough of a spiritual practice, I believe. That is the signs of ascension within you as an individual. All right, so that's how I would answer it, guys. How else are y'all feeling? How's this week been going as we're checking in we're doing this on a weekly basis to check in. How's this week been going for you? Is it one of those weeks of ease and peace, or one of those weeks of bumpy ride? Y'all both mentioned Charlie Kirk. Interestingly to me, I had never heard of Charlie Kirk, and someone had said to me, who is a colleague in the UK, and when we got onto a meeting, he said, "I'm so sorry to hear about the passing of Charlie Kirk." I'm like, I have to be honest, I've not heard of this individual before, but I do see the catalyst that it has created, you know. Anything else, though, with yourselves, not just necessarily on the world stage, which I'm not even paying attention to the crazy out there myself. But what about you guys, like personally?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know. I feel good. I sort of uh, don't care how I feel in a way because I just want to walk with God, so I sort of don't care. But I feel good though. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought here, but also just going back to some of the other things you were saying. You were mentioning, like telepathy and special abilities, and Jesus said, "You shall do all that I have done and greater." And I agree with that. I agree that if you're really take Jesus as God, or if you're a Christian, all those statements should be taken seriously. And I think a lot of Christians don't. I totally agree with that. But one thing I want to mention for people who might be listening to this, and think that stuff sounds crazy or unbelievable, I want to share the perspective that basically all of reality is magic. I don't think people get this. You can't explain how anything is here. So the whole thing is magic. Like, how did the human brain evolve? How did the human brain and nervous system evolve? How is there even consciousness? How is there individualized consciousness? How are there planets? How is there universe? The entire thing is magic. So in that context, it's not strange to suggest, hey, telepathy could happen, or more miraculous types of things could happen, because the whole thing is a miracle. And science is never going to explain this. And don't I know they're going to try to tell you that they will. They're not. They're not. They're not going to explain anything from, start to finish. They can figure out certain things, many things, but not from start to finish. So, um, how do you think? How do you feel? How do you emote? That's already absurd. There's no way. You how do you get any of this? So, like, actually, in that context, it's actually very reasonable to suggest that more types of consciousness, powers, or abilities could emerge. Um, I mean, that's also consistent with evolution, maybe a different idea of evolution, but consciousness evolves as well. It's not just biological markers or something, consciousness evolves as well. So to me, it's actually reasonable to assume that these things can happen when you place it in that context. I think you're muted. I think you're,
You're muted.
yeah.
I think the signs for yourself are things like I am more intuitive than I was before. I'm having more premonitions than I was having before. That's really interesting how much more premonitions. I'm more open than I am. I'm not as prone to judging others when they start talking about things. I feel like I have a little bit more love going on. I feel like I've healed some things. I think I feel like I've released some things. I've inexplicably forgiven. Those are the kind of things that I think you can look into your life and say, yes, you might have worked toward that and then it's happening, or maybe it's even spontaneously happening because of the fact that you are practicing something simple like gratitude. You've taken Myrna's gratitude challenge, to practice gratitude. And as you practice more and more gratitude, you have these side effects that happen. And because you have these side effects that are happening, you start noticing them. And to me, those are ascension signs. Those are signs that you are raising your frequency, whether you're doing it consciously or not, it can be happening. So, yeah, I think, and we do have, of course, these worldwide catalysts that make us more contemplative or make us have extension. And it's not even worldwide. Sometimes it can just be something that happens in your own life, your spouse comes to you and surprises you and says they want a divorce, or you lose a loved one, or something happens and you've now found out that you're going to be a parent. Anything that really can be a major change or transition in your life can be a catalyst for you to stop and go, whoa. A friend of mine calls it belly button gazing, where you stop and you start belly button gazing a little bit and you wonder, you're not as distracted by, doom scrolling and work and, this stuff and I got to go out there and cut the grass and I got to get this done and that done. Instead, you're actually kind of looking to yourself a little bit to know, what am I doing? What am I here for? What is my next step? Yeah. So those kind of things can be catalysts too. Yeah. Myrna, do you have any other final thoughts before we kind of close our breakfast?
Yeah, I do. I think in our history as humans, history as we know it, there have been times of reformation in religious constructs as well as cultural constructs. We didn't used to all be able to read. We didn't used to have a Bible we could read. Now we have 30 different Bibles in 30 different languages. I mean, there's so much difference. And I think this inflection point is brought to light a cultural reformation that's undergoing. And in the Ascension community, a spiritual community, we talk about vibration separation or vibration attraction. You talked about, Angela, that if you express gratitude on a regular basis, that kind of has a ripple effect and people respond to that vibe, or people are repelled by that vibe. And so some of that attraction and repelling is going on for people as we look at their social media posts or, I thought everybody agreed with me and I'm finding out everybody doesn't. There's a cultural shift or reformation that's happening and it can be disruptive.
Mhm.
I didn't know that person thought that way. I thought this person was my friend, but they're not my friend. Our family doesn't see things the same way. And this is a kind of refining, distilling, ascension process. So when we see these things, we think, well, yeah, of course, because we're in this process. But for other people, it's like, what happened? Half my friends aren't my friends anymore. So, yeah, I would encourage compassion and grace as we go through who we're attracted to and repelled by, who's attracted to us and repelled by us, because things are changing, we're changing. So have some grace and compassion for yourself and those around you. I think that's helpful, but we're seeing a lot of it. So I thought I would just mention the reformation that seems to be underway.
Good point. Very good point. Well, guys, we have had this been a deep conversation. Probably, maybe I asked too huge of a question because we could probably talk about this for hours. But I think that's a good stopping point. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week and we can check in with each other again about this whole crazy journey we're on, right? I mean, it's beautiful, but it's also crazy. All right. See you next week.